into it, they're all being doweled and drilled and doweled and pegged. So
The
we're
house
trying to
is-
keep
yeah.
the integrity of.
The house
how
is
it's
very
constructed.
happy that Joseph has moved into it, knowing what he knows. But, so,
Can I, one more thing?
yeah, sure.
The really cool thing is, as I'm going through the basement and redigging footings and raking out some of the dirt, we are finding a tremendous amount of old relics, door hinges, hasps, lock systems,
A hand-honed chain.
chain that
chain
was
that was-
hand wrought
yeah.
from, regular steel wire. And
We have a whole shelf going now of artifacts. I was like, let's find the can of money.
Yeah,
So what
really.
better place to hide it than in the basement? I mean, they didn't have, safes. So, but, okay, so the Stevens family, I did a lot of research, loving history like we do, and I had the time since we bought the house, on and off, on and off. I did a lot of research on the family, because I could do that on, all the genealogy, ancestry.com, and for a while there, I was able to get on Wikipedia genealogy. I somehow can't get back on it, but at the time, I downloaded a lot of stuff. I recently, in the fall, went over to Lincoln County and started looking for deeds to the house. And we're in, cause before Kennebec County, it was Lincoln County, and we're all in Book 1. It was really cause like, okay, what's the oldest one, Book 1, and I was like, oh my God, there we are, I was so excited. So I have a lot of those deeds, and I went over to Kennebec, and I got some more deeds, and then I was trying to find the tax records to kind of narrow down, cause it's up in the air exactly like you, when the house was built and by who, that kind of thing. But we can't get the tax records because they're in some random box shoved in the storeroom at the town office, which is a whole nother conversation for another time. I was very
Got that right.
disturbed and enlightened and upset when I
Sign
heard
her
all
up.
about that. But anyway, the Stevens family here starts with Joseph Sr. John Chandler came here to Pond Town. He was the fourth settler to settle here. And prior to them, they lived in Ipswich, Massachusetts, with the Stevens family. They all lived in the same town. So when Chandler came over, he brought Amos Stevens, who's William's brother, older brother. The Stevens had 11, and then my Stevens had 11, but Amos is way up there, and my Joseph is down at the bottom. But so Amos was 18 years old. He was the fourth child of 11, and he came over with Chandler as a hired hand. And Chandler built the mill in 1768. They came over in 1767. They all came from Ipswich, New Hampshire. The Stevens family was masons and farmers and carpenters by trade in Massachusetts. 2 years later, Amos was here for 2 years and said, okay, Dad, come on over. So in 1769, he came here and settled on lot 65, which was 300 acres in that whole Sherwood Forest, all that area up there, Reed Field, Sturveson Hill, all that was a Stevens land. The deal was, at the time, if you came here, you could settle on the land. You had 3 years to clear the land, build the land, and start doing something with it. And then the king would deed you the land. So, in keeping suit, in August 28th of 1772, King James deeded that land to Joseph. And I don't know who I was talking to, but I have copies of that deed for you guys. I also have copies of the deeds from King James of the Chandlers, Timothy Fawcett Jr., Jonathan Whiting, so you guys can all have that. I don't know if you have it or not, but
Nope.
I did it. We don't need it. I did it for you guys. And it's so Amos and his brother Samuel, who was number 5 of 11, they would also received grants in the early years of the settlement. And interesting to note, Joseph Stevens, who's a junior, Jonathan Whiting and John Chandler were the committee to effect the finishing of the meeting house which was approved at the town meeting of July 28, 1774. So they're the ones who built which makes sense, because they were carpenters and all that. So Joseph Jr., that's the guy who got the lot, and married Elizabeth Emery, and they had 11 children, of which William, my guy, was one of them. And it's funny because William married Susanna Whiting. Amos married Mary Whiting. So the brothers married sisters, and we all know Jonathan Whiting was huge here, and he was a sergeant in the Revolutionary War, and he was the first representative in the General Court in 1783. So William was born in Ipswich, New Hampshire, and then when his father sent for the family, he came over here. He was born on July 4th, 1760, and died on the land on September 17th, 1823. He was 70, and he says he was, died suddenly of heart disease while working in his field. So he had that. But as far as the town, we have a plaque on the house that says Captain William Stevens, house settled, not sure what the settled means, but house settled 1769. The land was settled in 1769. Some house was on it because Joseph lived somewhere. It couldn't have been William because he was only 9 years old at the time. Now, William, at 18 years of age, joined Colonel Lamb's 2nd Regiment Artillery Division of the Continental Army, Massachusetts, and there's where he rose to the rank of captain. He was there from January 1st of 1777 to December 31st of 1780. Now, our homeowners insurance says a house was built in 1780. The plaque says other. Can't get a hold of the tax records. So we're thinking that maybe Joseph had the house built, and then when William came home from the war, he was married, and that's the only marriage date also I can't find. I found the brothers' marriage dates, I can't find the date that he married his wife. But their first child, they had 11, they raised 11 children in that house. The first one was in 1784. So, we don't know. Either Joseph had been living there, so okay, you're home now, go live there with your wife and kids, and I'll build further up on Sturveson, or it was built and he just left it for William, we don't know. So there's a confusion over the dates as it is back then, you don't really know.
That's why we want the tax records.
Right?
Because they paid taxes, we know that.
They have them back to 1980, and I was like, people have lived in the house before 1980, they had to pay taxes, where are those records? I don't know. Everything was, I don't know. Several phone calls later, I talked to Jeff, and he called me back, and he's like, well, they're all in boxes somewhere, unmarked, uncatalogued, just, all our historical records are in boxes, unmarked, uncatalogued, no rhyme or reason, they're just stacked up. He goes, it's a needle and haystack, I have no idea where to even start. He goes, they're just in boxes all over the room, and I was like, okay. I was like, so what about if the Historical Society gets a group, and he goes, I can't let you in there. I was like, what about if we get a group together and we can start organizing? He goes, that would be nice. And I was like, but that's where all our historical records are all in a storeroom in unmarked boxes, with no rhyme and reason to what's in what box. So that's.
But we do know there are tax records, because all those books
Came
all
from
refer
something.
back to the tax records.
Right, because
You
we
know, when
read
it
that
was-
Stackpole
yeah,
book,
when it
and
was
we
all-
have another little book of Winthrop history.
That's David
found
Thurston.
Some,
Yes,
oh, yes,
Thurston, yes.
yeah. So, Joseph deeded the land, part of the land, to William on December 28th of 1789. With it was interesting, and I have a copy of that deed for you guys too. with the understanding that Joseph would be responsible for everything concerning the land until his death. Like William could live there, this is your land, and by that time this is your house, but let it be known that I will take care of everything, you don't have to worry about anything until I die, which I thought was, you know,
Pretty neat.
nice. Really nice. And it stayed in the Stevens family until 1942. Was the last of the Stevens heir, and then it fell into tax lien. It was abandoned for decades and decades, until the Gilmores bought it at a tax auction in November 10th of 1972, and they're the ones who subdivided it all and split it up. I share a stone wall with Linda, and in the winter I can see her house, and she can see the back of ours. And it's neat because we have paved roads in that area, which is nice, especially if you have dogs, and we do, and I'm always walking the dogs, and you see the stone walls all over the hill, and it's like, that's Stevens, because they owned all that. It's like, oh, wow, wow, wow. We know that in the back part of our house, there stood a barn. It's very on the side of the hill into the forest. But you have the part of the stone wall, and we have the other part. It's like a road. We're always like, wow, that's so cool. Why is there a road there? And then somebody else who's been here forever said, oh, there used to be a barn there, and the road is where Stevens used to put their cattle to go underneath the barn. The barn had a whole underneath part of it because it was on a hill. So all the cattle would go underneath, and they could put all the rest of their stuff on top on the regular level, ground level. So, and they're all still there. All those stone walls are still there, and there's all footprints all over our land where outer buildings used to be, and this and that. I'm always digging in the garden. We have a whole shelf of those things that we found, but it's really cool. It's really interesting. Like I said, the house is filled now with antiques, and everybody's like, this is like a museum. I was like, yes, it is. And anybody's welcome to come look. Just if it's messy, don't look at the mess. Just look at the house. But you're all welcome. So that's